You know what they did. That is what makes it confusing. You remember the disrespect, the disappointment, the message you wish you had never read, the promise they made and then quietly broke. Maybe you have explained the story to your friends so many times that you already know what they are going to say. You are better off without them. And maybe they are right. You may even agree. Yet somehow your mind keeps going back. You wonder what they are doing, whether they think about you, whether they regret it. You replay conversations looking for the moment everything changed. You remember something cruel they said, feel angry all over again, and then, 10 minutes later, remember the way they used to look at you when everything was good. It can feel almost humiliating. Why am I still thinking about someone who hurt me? Shouldn't the hurt have made this easier? That question assumes something about attachment that is rarely true. That once your mind understands someone is wrong for you, the rest of you immediately receives the memo. It doesn't. Insight can arrive in a day. Attachment often leaves more slowly. Romantic bonds are not formed only from opinions about whether someone is good for you. They are built through repetition, familiar voices, shared routines, reassurance, anticipation, private jokes, places that slowly become your places together. A future that begins appearing in your imagination with another person already standing inside it. Someone can become woven into the ordinary architecture of your life. Then the relationship changes or ends. Your judgment can say, "I do not want to be treated like that again." And at exactly the same time, another part of you can still expect their name to appear on your phone. Those two things can coexist. Research on romantic rejection suggests that losing someone does not simply switch romantic motivation off. In people who were recently rejected but still intensely attached to an ex, seeing that person could still engage systems involved in motivation and reward. That does not mean heartbreak is literally an addiction. It means wanting can survive after a relationship has stopped being good for you. And that distinction matters, because attachment is not a character reference. Missing someone does not certify that they were kind to you. Wanting to hear their voice does not prove you should call. Feeling relief when they message does not erase what happened before the message arrived. Your mind can remain attached to someone your standards have already rejected. But attachment is only one part of this. Sometimes what keeps a person alive in your thoughts is not how much you love them. It is how little sense the ending made. Human beings like stories that resolve: cause, effect, explanation, lesson. Relationships do not always give us that. Someone can tell you they love you and then behave as though you are disposable. Someone can make you feel incredibly safe and later become the reason you no longer feel safe with them. Someone can apologize beautifully and repeat the same behavior. Someone can give you enough tenderness to make their cruelty difficult to understand. So your mind keeps returning to the evidence. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe they were scared. Maybe I asked for too much. Maybe if I had said this differently. Maybe the version of them I loved was the real one, and the person who hurt me was somehow the exception. The thought feels like reflection. Sometimes it is. But reflection has a point at which it becomes rumination. Rumination can disguise itself as investigation. It tells you that if you replay the relationship one more time, you may discover the missing piece that finally makes everything hurt less. So you analyze it, reconstruct it, try to understand it. But understanding what happened and emotionally accepting that it happened are not the same task. Sometimes there is no missing explanation. Sometimes you already have enough information. You simply dislike the answer. They were capable of caring about you and hurting you. They may have meant some of the beautiful things they said and still failed to become the person those words required. The relationship may have contained real love and still have been wrong for you. That is harder to accept than a clean villain. A clean villain would be easier to leave behind. Ambivalence is harder, because every painful memory has a beautiful memory standing beside it, and your mind keeps trying to make one cancel the other. But it doesn't have to. The good moments do not make the harm imaginary. The harm does not require every good moment to have been fake. Sometimes, two truths remain two truths. And there is another reason someone can remain strangely present after they are gone. A relationship does not only change how you feel about another person. Over time, it can change how you understand yourself. You become the person who talks to them before bed, the person who spends Sundays there, the person planning that trip next year, the person who knows their family, the person whose future has quietly changed from I to we. Then, suddenly the relationship disappears, and you are not only losing someone, you are losing routines, expectations, social roles, imagined futures, pieces of identity that formed around the relationship. So the question can become much larger than, how do I stop missing them? It can become, who am I now that this version of my life no longer exists? You can know you would never take them back and still miss who you were when you believed everything was going to work. You can miss the apartment, the routines, the anticipation, the future you thought you were walking toward. Sometimes you do not want the person back. You want the world back from before you knew what they were capable of doing to you. And because that world cannot be recovered, the mind keeps visiting it. But sometimes there is an even more frightening thought underneath all of this. What if they were the one? What if they change? What if this was only a terrible chapter? What if 5 years from now you look back and realize you walked away from the person you were supposed to end up with? Suddenly, letting go does not feel like accepting the past. It feels like gambling with the future. So part of you keeps the relationship mentally alive, not necessarily because it was working, but because closing the door feels irreversible, and you cannot know with certainty what would have happened if you kept it open. Sometimes you are not waiting for the person. You are waiting for certainty that leaving them was the right decision. But relationships rarely give that kind of certainty. You cannot evaluate someone by every person they might become someday. You can only respond to the relationship that actually existed. Because fear of missing the one can keep you attached to a version of someone who exists mostly in the future. And potential is difficult to grieve because it never has to prove itself. This is also why checking their social media can feel irresistible. For a moment, uncertainty disappears. There they are. A new picture, a new place, a new person. Some tiny piece of information. You feel informed. And then the questions multiply. Who took that picture? Why do they look happy? Have they moved on? Was I easier to lose than I thought? Research on post-breakup social media monitoring has found that keeping close tabs on an ex is associated with greater distress and longing and with less personal growth. That does not prove checking causes all of those feelings, but it points towards something worth noticing. Sometimes checking feels like staying informed, when what you are really doing is keeping the relationship psychologically available. A door does not feel completely closed when you look through the keyhole every night. So what do you do with all of this? Maybe the first step is smaller than get over them. Stop treating every thought about them as a message. A memory is not an instruction. Longing is not a recommendation. Missing them tonight does not require contacting them tonight. Wondering whether they regret it does not require finding out. Thinking they might change does not require waiting around to see if they do. You can allow a feeling to exist without giving it authority. And when the same thought returns for the 100th time, ask a different question. Not only, why am I thinking about them? Ask, what am I hoping this thought will give me? An explanation? An apology? Proof that I mattered? Evidence that they regret losing me? Certainty that leaving was right? A different ending? The person themselves? Or the version of myself that existed before this happened? Those are different losses, and they require different kinds of grieving. If what you want is an explanation, another conversation may not provide one. If what you want is proof that you mattered, their regret cannot become the measurement of your worth. If what you want is certainty that you made the right decision, you may have to accept that some decisions are made without ever receiving perfect proof. If what you want is the person you thought they could become, you may have to grieve someone who never fully existed. And if what you want is your old self back, healing may require building a life that does not depend on returning to who you were before. This is where distance can matter. Not as punishment, not as a performance designed to make them miss you, but as information. If every message, profile check, photograph, or update reactivates the same questions, distance gives you a chance to learn what your mind feels like without constantly receiving new material about them. Then begin rebuilding the parts of your life that became fused with the relationship. Go somewhere that was never theirs. Develop a routine they never touched. Listen to music without wondering whether they would like it. Make plans that do not contain an invisible space where they used to stand. The goal is not to erase them from memory. Trying to force yourself never to think about someone can make the thought feel even more important. The goal is quieter. Make your life larger than the memory, until one day something reminds you of them and you notice that you remembered without reaching. You remembered without checking. You remembered without rewriting the ending. You remembered without wondering whether you should wait. You remembered without asking the memory to tell you what to do next. That may be what moving on actually looks like. Not forgetting, not proving that you never cared, not transforming someone you once loved into someone you must now hate. Just no longer requiring the past to become different before the present is allowed to continue. Because someone can have mattered enormously and still not belong in your future. Someone can have loved you in the ways they knew how and still have hurt you in ways you should not accept. Someone can have extraordinary potential and still not be the right person to build a life with today. You can miss them and maintain the boundary. You can wonder about them and leave the question unanswered. You can love what was real without returning to what became harmful. Those are not contradictions. They are what happens when attachment takes longer to leave than understanding. So if someone who hurt you is still living in your thoughts, perhaps the question is not, why am I weak enough to still think about them? Maybe the better question is, what is my mind still trying to recover? And once you know the answer, you may discover that you do not actually need them to recover it. Because closure is not always the moment the story finally makes sense. Sometimes closure is the moment you stop asking the person who hurt you to become the person who heals you. And perhaps moving on begins there. Not when you stop remembering them, but when remembering them no longer changes where you are going.